Our next bill for consideration is House Bill number 82. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 82, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Defendant Mental Illness Examinations Amendments, an act relating to criminal procedures. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred House Bill 82, Defendant Mental Illness Examinations Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Harnack, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rise to report to do so with the recommendation that House Bill 82 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I'll turn over the floor management of the bill to the good Vice Chairman of Appropriations.
Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, we're back at it again this afternoon, and on this, what we're trying to do in House Bill 82 is address a challenge that we've been having as we redesign our mental health and judicial reform system. If somebody has been convicted of a felony and pleads incompetent because of mental illness, you do an evaluation to determine if that's indeed the case. And in doing so, we have our statutes in 711-303 where that if it's a felony offense, the examination of the accused at the Wyoming State Hospital on an inpatient, and this is an important, an inpatient or an outpatient basis. And so then that individual would go to if it's determined to be an inpatient, would go to the state hospital, spend time there, and determine if they were competent to stand trial, and if so, then start in the restoration process. What we have in our current statutes is for misdemeanor charges, we have the same process where if the accused for a misdemeanor pleads that they don't have the mental capacity to stand trial, then they can have an inpatient or outpatient examination to make that determination at the state hospital. And with that, what we're seeing is that many times these misdemeanor, these people who have committed misdemeanors are spending more time in jail waiting for an inpatient evaluation at the state hospital because our limited beds there for Title VII evaluations are being taken up by misdemeanor and felonies for a longer period of time. And so we oftentimes have these folks that sit in jail for a longer period of time, more time than if they had done their sentence. And so what we do in this bill is we say that if the accused is charged only with a misdemeanor offense, the order may include but is not limited to an examination of the accused at a local mental health center on an inpatient, outpatient basis, or at his place of detention, or at the Wyoming State Hospital on an outpatient basis. Now, if that outpatient examination determines that an inpatient examination is warranted, then they can be admitted for an inpatient. So we're trying to reduce the amount of time that somebody who received a misdemeanor gets their evaluation and can be restored or stand trial. And so we're trying to move this process through the state hospital and through the justice system as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for questions.
Representative or Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Washam.
Thank you. Members, I encourage an aye vote on this bill. When you think about who these people are in your community who may have some mental health struggles, what lands them in jail is almost I won't say never, but rarely is it a felony. Much more often, it's going to be a breach of the peace. Somebody is acting out, speaking loudly, waving his arms around out in front or inside somebody's business, just out of control kind of behavior. They call the local police, the police come, tell him to settle down, he won't settle down. He goes to jail for breach of the peace, misdemeanor, okay? As is now, we create quite the log jam as those individuals are waiting for an opportunity to go to the state hospital to be evaluated on whether or not they're competent to stand trial on this misdemeanor crime that might result in a small fine or a day or two in jail. So what we're trying to do is break that log jam, get these individuals seen by a practitioner who can make that assessment whether or not these individuals are competent to stand trial, and let the judicial process move along on these minor crimes. Please vote aye.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Swanitzer's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill number 82 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 82 is passed. The committee of the whole. The next bill for consideration is House Bill, number 90. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 90, sponsored by Representative Knapp, Sex Offender Registration Requirements, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 90, Sex Offender Registration Requirements, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Craigo, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Chestick, Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Waship?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 90 do pass. And I turn over an explanation of that bill to the sponsor, the good representative from District 53.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I present to you House Bill 90 and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill basically solves one thing. We have a sex offender registry currently in Wyoming, and after a period of time, those individuals are allowed to request, after a 10-year period and after a 25-year period, omission from that list. And this is a constituent bill, and it's a bill that's not designed to punish, but it actually, to me, is a bill that gives hope. The problem with sexual offenses, especially violent sexual offenses, is the recidivism rate. I did give a handout that will show in one particular study, the recidivism rate increases over time. So 14% after 5 years, 20% recidivism rate after 10 years, and 24% recidivism rate after 15 years. This bill would allow for those most heinous offenses, first and second degree, crimes against a minor, and incest, to have a lifetime registry on that registry. I think it's a bill of hope because it gives future families the ability to know who they're marrying into, future spouses, future children. When you get recidivism rates that are this high, I believe that it is the state's obligation to be part of the solution. These crimes live in secrecy. These crimes live in the darkness, and they cycle. This allows a light to be shown and at least have future families be aware of what they're getting into. So just going through the bill on page 2, deals with specific statutes and would make this registry of 10 years not available for first and second degree crimes against a minor or incest. Going down the page to the bottom, these crimes, this particular statute, 712-302 or 719-302H, deals specifically with minors. So it would make it a lifetime registry also, instead of being able to file after 25 years. And I would stand for questions.
Mr. Knapp, I believe we have an amendment. Amendment? Questions?
I'm on the bill, though. Question on the bill, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Question being called?
No.
Nope.
A different type of question. I would like to ask a question.
Question. All right. Chairman Olson.
Thank
got
you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
on the bill.
To the good bringer of the bill, I'm just trying to understand what went into your thought pattern between the lifetime registration versus the 10-year registration. I understand that if the offense is against a minor, then you're exempting them out of that. After 25 years, they may apply for leave of the requirement to register. But I'm just curious what the thought pattern was to leave it to only minors. Minor offenses, sorry.
Representative Knapp.
Could I have that again, please?
Can we have the question restated, Representative Olson?
Yes, so the bill basically deals in two parts. The first part of the bill, you insert a number of offenses that if you've committed this offense, then after 10 years, you cannot apply for the relief from the requirement to register. The second part of the bill is a 25-year period. And so the way that I read it, under the 25-year period, you're saying if the offense is against a minor child, then you can't apply for relief, period. I'm just curious, what is the policy reason behind restricting that to minors? Are the other offenses, I guess in my mind, are still heinous enough that I would have included them in the prohibition in the second half of the bill as well? So that's what I'm just curious, what is the policy behind that?
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on the phrase violation of another jurisdiction and so forth. How do we know that, and what's envisioned for enforcing that, managing that?
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On the first question, that was a question I had myself in having LSO draft a bill. The bill deals with two separate parts of a statute. So the first one, dealing with 10 years, deals with multiple, it's first and second offense in addition to, or not first and second offense, but first degree, second degree, and the addition of minors and incest. The second part of the statute, 719-302, deals specifically with minors. And so that's the reason between the two differences in what actual offenses they cover. So that's the first question. The second one, as a person comes into the state, they are required to register with Wyoming. I'm not sure as to the tracking of how they make sure that they do, but it is a charge if they do not.
I believe we have a committee of the whole amendment. Representative Chestik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1. And my explanation is that as the good bringer of the bill has explained the bill to us, this bill makes a lifetime list you cannot get off of if you fall into the categories that are listed in the bill. It's a permanent registration you can never get away from. But I think my amendment changes it. It's a fairly simple change, and that is I think we need to give some protection to offenders who are under the age of 18. An offender who commits one of these crimes under the age of 18, I think we need to give that person a second chance, because offenders that young are not fully emotionally mature under the age of 18. They could make a bad mistake and be subject now to a lifetime on the sex offender registry. And the kinds of offenses that we're talking about here are sex offenses, and it's in the area of sex that a lot of these juveniles are still emotionally not fully developed and not really mature. And it's understandable they might make a bad mistake, and I think we need to give them a chance. My amendment does not change the conviction, does not change the punishment. It just gives a court an opportunity to review a case of an offender who was under the age of 18 at the time of the offense, to consider that person for a second chance. And I think it's only fair to these young offenders, and that's my amendment.
Any discussion on committee of the whole amendment number 1? Okay, question be called. All those in favor of committee of the whole amendment number 1, please say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment fails. All those in favor stand. Please stay still. All opposed, please stand. All right, too close to call. We're going to have to go roll call. So, pursuant to House Rule 6-6B, the amendment, we're going to have a roll call vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Ellerman, Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger?
Aye.
Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom excused. Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washit? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Bear? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 33 aye, 28 no, 1 excused.
Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 is adopted. Let's go back on the bill. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a no in committee in part because we had conversations about what the evidence was, and I appreciate that the bringer of the bill has given us some information on that. However, I still do not have the citation for some of these meta-analyses. And so you might remember from last session, or maybe it was 2021, when I talked about the what constitutes a good scientific paper. And there's a big difference in terms of what is good empirical evidence versus what is pseudo evidence. And so I don't know what's true about these. I'm not making accusations. I need to be able to look at them to give you a better understanding. And another concern that I have about this bill is that the evidence so far suggests that these registries are not helpful, that they don't prevent, they don't reduce. It gives a false sense of security, a false sense of safety. I'm happy to bring some of that information maybe on second reading, following up potentially with an amendment, but saying I'm not prepared to give you that evidence right now off the top of my head, unfortunately, so I apologize for that, body. But I would ask that you keep that in mind, vote your conscience right now, and yeah, thank you.
Any more discussion? Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, just have a couple questions so I understand what the bill does. If I understand it right, it takes sexual assault in the second degree, for example, which is Wyoming Statute 6-2-303, and says that if you're guilty of that, then you're on that lands you on the sex offender registry for a minimum of 25 years, is what I think the bill does. And so I just want to make sure that that's what it does. That right now, if you commit sexual assault in the second degree, you're on the registry for 10 years, and then after 10 years, you can petition to be removed from the registry. But under this bill, it's minimum 25 years for second-degree sexual assault. I just want to make sure that's what the bill does. I think that's what it does. And then to put a finer point on it, there are some things in second-degree sexual assault that might not first come to mind. So for example, if you're a cook at the county jail, you're a woman, you're a cook at the county jail, and you have consensual sex with an inmate, that's second-degree sexual assault under our statutes. And you would be on the registry under this bill for a minimum of 25 years, I think. And the same as if you're a 20-year-old female substitute teacher, you have sex with a student who's 16, say, you're on the sex offender registry for minimum 25 years. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what this bill does. Thank you.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, currently, there's one set of statutes that applies for the 10-year, and there's one set of statutes for minors and incest that applies for 25 years. This would actually make it a lifetime registry. And I want to make it clear, this isn't two teenagers falling in love and making a mistake and one being much older than the other and ending up getting married and living life blissfully. These are some of the most violent attacks. These are some of the repeat offenders that we talk about in recidivism. These are positions where you could have a position of authority, where it occurs with blackmail to have a victim participate. This can occur in a family where you have a caregiver causing that. These are manipulations and the most heinous of our sexual crimes. Third and fourth degree, this does not address. This is first and second degree cases of a minor and incest that gives a lifetime registry.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's been said, but it is carved out that it's first-degree sex assault. That's your forcible rape. First-degree sex assault, second-degree sex assault, and then first-degree sexual assault of a minor and second-degree sexual assault of a minor. A good representative talked about when there's sexual contact between like a prison guard, there's actually a specific statute for that. And usually that is not taken under position of authority. Usually position of authority is much more like your example where it's a teacher with a student. So I appreciate what the bringer of this bill has done in trying to say, we're going to try to focus on, according to our statute, these are the serious ones. And then I guess finally what I'd like to say, we kind of had some discussions about recidivism. Keep this in mind. What you're talking about is, how onerous it is for somebody who's been convicted of something like first-degree sexual assault after they're on probation to go in and say where their address is with the sheriff's office. So it's not like we're talking a huge burden. And what he has done with this bill is keep it to the what should be considered the more heinous crimes. So on balance, if there's anything that can be done to help recidivism, if the registry does anything, then I can support that because it doesn't really add an onus. And I have had the misfortune of prosecuting somebody for their second first-degree sex assault. So anything we can do to keep tabs, I think, policy decision, but keep in mind what we're weighing here as far as the onus that you expect them to basically have tabs kept on them is what the registry does. So with that, I'm for the bill. Vote aye.
Further discussion? Representative Yen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So regarding that onus of keeping track of folks on the registry, has the good sponsor of the bill contemplated whether that would end up increasing the Department of Corrections budget? Or whoever keeps track of the folks in the registry, I don't know who that is.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that would cause any fiscal impact. We already track them now. And as far as the use of the registry, I know for myself, my daughter and I went door to door since she was born. And I would check that registry before we went out. I would, because not only does it give the name and address, it gives the nature of the crime. And that's important to know. Keep in mind and one person spoke, these studies, they're fairly consistent. And at 24% recidivism rate after 15 years, those are the ones that got caught. The recidivism rate comes from the ones that got caught. So just keep that in mind.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple questions just about the recidivism rate. Obviously, it sounds like recidivism is a big problem for sex offenders. I'm just interested, I don't know the answer. What's the evidence about, does being on the registry make you less likely to offend? Is it positively correlated with, positively correlated with not reoffending, I guess would be the way to say it. And the next question is with respect to the prosecution of this. When someone's accused of sexual assault, they likely may not want to risk going to trial, right? And even the prosecutor often would prefer to have a plea agreement, I think. So I'd be interested to know from, say, a prosecutor's point of view, if there's one in the House, whether it might affect someone's willingness to plead guilty. So, for example, you have the situation where two people go out on a date, they're both drinking, neither one of them has a very good memory of what happened. One accuses the other of sexual assault. The alleged perpetrator steadfastly maintains his innocence, but is also concerned about getting convicted. So he pleads, he, assuming it's a man, might plead guilty to sexual assault, because he doesn't want, say, in the second degree, instead of risking getting convicted for first degree, for example, right? If we ratchet up this sex offender registry so that it's not a 10-year, but now it's a 25-year or a lifetime ban, is that going to have any effect on someone's willingness to enter into a plea agreement? I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be interested in knowing whether there may be adverse, unintended consequences from this bill. Thank you.
Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to comment on whether or not it's a good thing to have those. I worked at a school district for 15 years, and it was in a small community. We did have the notices down by the district office, and it was definitely a deterrent. It kept parents advised of the perpetrators, or I would say people that had been convicted, places where they need to make sure that their children are observed and taken care of, places maybe where they wouldn't let them go, or that they would let them go in a group, different neighbors and things that you would do to get to know this person, to let them know that they were being watched. So to have that notification in the neighborhood years down the road was a very good deterrent. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Oakley.
Mr. Chair, very briefly, I don't know if this is that important, but I guess to answer or to discuss the good representative's question, I can't see that if somebody's willing to plead to a sex offense, that pleading to the sex offense isn't much more what, and the consequences of that aren't much more on their mind than, like, yeah, I'll plead to second-degree sex assault, just don't make me register. I see that way down the list, so no, I can't see how that would end up being a deterrent to pleading. There was a case once, we'll say it that way, where it was actually specifically having sex with it was a female guard having sex with an inmate. And she did not want the sex offender registry, that was part of it, but then, you do what you do as a prosecutor, you see a trial. So there's a bunch of factors that make people not want to plead guilty to crimes, but I don't see how this is even on the level of a deterrent for that personally, with all the other factors that are involved.
Representative Knapp?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just one final comment on the bill. Again, this was a constituency bill. And I really looked at it, and it does hit close to home, because all of us know someone that has been affected by this. And this isn't to punish. This is simply a tool for people to use when that mom decides to remarry into another family or relationship, that she's aware what she's getting into. Or that girlfriend who decides to make that move, to make something more serious, to live with a spouse. We talked about underage marriage the other day. These are important things for people to use to be able to plan what might happen in their future. And I'm not sure why sexual crimes are so high in recidivism rate. I'm not sure the mentality that is involved with it. But I do know that as society, I think this is a good tool to use to be able to guard against that. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washat's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 90 pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? House Bill 90 is passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill number 142. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 142, sponsored by Representative Western. Notice of annexation, an act relating to cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 142, notice of annexation, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Olson, Chairman.
Chairman Olson, what's your pleasure?
My pleasure would be, Mr. Chairman, that I would like to move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so at the recommendation that House Bill 142 do pass. I would further move the adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 142. I'll turn over the explanation of the bill to the sponsor, and I'll take up the Standing Committee Amendment after the bill is explained. The sponsor from House District 51.
Colleagues, thank you
Representative
very
Western.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. Colleagues, I bring you House Bill 142. Not to beat a dead horse, we've obviously covered a lot of this turf last week with our annexation bill. This was brought to me as a constituent bill with some of these concerns that were going on in my neck of the woods, and ensuring all the folks who are outside the annexation area are just simply made aware and informed that there is an annexation going on. You can kind of see the meat of the bill right there. It's very similar language, almost the exact language that we debated last week as part of the annexation discussion then. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question I have, we annexed, or we did an amendment on the same bill into the bill we just passed out of the House, going to the Senate. what's that going to do if mine goes over the Senate? The other end of
Mr.
the
Chairman, point of
hallway?
order. Just to make sure we
Point of order.
don't use the name of the body at the other end of the hall. Thank you.
The other end of the hall here, and mine gets through, and his gets through. His
Point of
goes
order,
over
Mr.
there.
Chairman. We're also not supposed to infer what the body down the hall would or would not do in this body.
We'll stay on this, our house.
Okay, with the two bills the same, what's going to happen? That's the question I have. Thank you.
Representative Western. You have heard the motion or question on, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's a standing committee amendment, if I could, please. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I will
Question hadn't
explain.
been called.
No, you don't want a question on the bill yet because you have a standing committee amendment.
Where I was, standing committee amendment. Are we on the standing committee? Yep.
We're on the standing committee amendment. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I please explain this standing committee amendment? It does two things. First, the original bill dealt with the notice requirement to be mailed out first-class mail, or certified mail, excuse me. This bill changes it to first-class mail. This would be onerous and expensive on the part of the citizens who would have to deal with the mail. So that one's pretty straightforward. The second requirement is, or the requirement that notice be given to anyone adjacent to the property within 550 feet. After discussions with the association that represents municipalities and after discussion with several figureheads from municipalities, I think that all parties agree on a 300-foot radius instead of a 550-foot radius. And that's the amendment. So the amendment itself will also answer the question of the previous speaker regarding the bills. This amendment would actually make this bill pretty significantly different from the bill that we already talked about earlier on annexation. So hopefully that clarifies that question as well.
Okay, you've heard the motion on the standing committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I'm all about saving money, but there's a big difference between certified mail and first class. Certified, we're going to know, we're going to have a tracking system. We have a way to know that the mail was received. First class, we don't have that. So how will we satisfy ourselves that the folks we're trying to notify have been notified? Thank you.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the question from the good gentleman from the capital city, again, this is for folks outside the annexation area. When you're dealing with folks inside the annexation area, there's a whole different protocol, though. We talked about certified mail, all that whole rigmarole. This is just a courtesy to folks who are outside the annexation area. Again, once you do first class or certified mail, it's quite a difference in price. And if we're trying to reduce the amount of money that our municipalities are spending on these notices, you'd have to fact check me, but I think it's about an $8 to $9 difference between going certified and going first class. So it's just a money saving measure. We heard from a couple of mayors that testified in committee saying that 300 is a pretty adequate number, and that's kind of the explanation behind that. So I encourage an aye vote on the amendment.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I was in on this conversation, and one of the discussions that came forward with this first class or certified is it comes into right at $4.20. So in a populated area, there's a very good chance when someone pays to have this take place. So a lot of times if someone's wanting to be annexed in and they pay to have that take place, you could be looking at up to a couple $1,000s just for that outside area, that 300-foot window. Now, obviously, anyone that's directly affected inside the annexation, certified mail has to be. That's not even a question. But this is just more just giving that direction to neighbors outside of that or businesses outside of that within that 300-foot radius of the outer border, and saving them that cost, which can be, for some people, pretty overwhelming.
Question having been called. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? The Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to report to do so with the recommendation to Bill number 142 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 142 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill number 134. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 134, sponsored by Representative Nemec. Alcoholic sales to licensees, an act relating to alcohol. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 134, alcohol sales to licensees, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 134 do pass. I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 134. I'll take the explanation of the Standing Committee Amendment first. Committee of the Whole, what I'm going to ask you to do is actually reject the Standing Committee Amendment. As sometimes happens, when the amendment doesn't always come out the way that you intended it. And the amendment as it was originally drafted contains an or provision that's pretty significantly altering from what the committee actually intended the amendment to do. So I've worked with the sponsor of the bill, and there is a Committee of the Whole amendment that embodies the Standing Committee Amendment properly. So I'm going to ask you to vote no here on the Committee of the Whole, or the Standing Committee Amendment, excuse me, and then you'll hear later from the sponsor on the Committee of the Whole Amendment, which the committee recommends that you do adopt. And then if there are no questions on the Standing Committee Amendment, I will call the question on it.
Question having been called. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? No. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has failed. We're back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll turn over the explanation of the bill to the representative from House District 60, hailing from where the water is sweet.
Representative Nemec.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 134, alcohol sales to licensees, is a nifty and simple bill I bring to the members of the 67th. Under current law, retail liquor license holders can purchase from a fellow retail licensee a small amount, no more than 9 liters of alcohol per week, and sell at their retail establishment. This language was adopted in 2019 under the statutory heading of outages, simply meaning that if one retailer has an especially busy weekend that runs out of, let's say, our popular item at his bar, he can purchase from a fellow retail a small quantity that hopefully satisfies his customer needs until the next delivery from the state can occur. The current law does not apply to a manufacturer holding a satellite license. They are prohibited from the occasional small quantity sale to their retailers down the street. This bill corrects that. And for a reason that is simple, to support our small craft Wyoming-based distillers. In consultation with the agency that administers our liquor laws and shipments, the Retail Association and Wholesale Association, let me make sure I don't mess this up, the Committee of the Whole Amendment, I ask for your support of the Committee of the Whole Amendment and bill. A couple of additional points I would like to share with the body. This does not create the ability of the small distiller to bypass the 3-tier system of alcohol delivery and control, nor does it allow for any taxes or revenue to the state to be avoided. This bill has the support of small distillers, retailers, and wholesalers. Again, I ask for your aye vote On the Committee of the Whole amendment, I move for the amendment.
Question being called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Representative Nemec. Question being called. All those in favor of Representative or Chairman Olson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Bill number 134 do pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 134 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for consideration is House Bill number 112. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 112, sponsored by Representative Oakley. Theft penalty for fifth or subsequent offense. An act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 112, theft penalty for fifth or subsequent offense, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Grego, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez, Williams, Washit. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman.
Chairman Washut, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washut?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that House Bill 112 do pass, and I turn over the explanation of the bill to our country prosecutor for the middle of the state.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today I bring you House Bill 112 and ask for your aye vote. One of our favorite phrases here in the legislature, it's a good little bill. And so what it does is provide a felony enhancement for theft. So it is upon a fifth or subsequent conviction of theft, it could be taken as a felony. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot. That was done intentionally to try to say, to make sure we're looking at, a serial shoplifter or serial thief, and not over criminalizing property crimes. But this is a very serious issue for our retailers at Main Street, our big box retailers. This is an issue that we're seeing at home. So looking at the bill, obviously, page 2, what you'll notice is that it says for a fifth or subsequent offense for theft, shoplifting, larceny, wrongful taking, or disposal of property, livestock rustling, or other theft offense under this section, or any theft offense under municipal ordinance or pursuant to a substantially similar law of another jurisdiction. And so a lot of words there, but because theft can come in a lot of forms, right? And our theft statutes used to have shoplifting and all of these, and now we don't, it's just under theft. But obviously the intent of the bill is to make sure that if they have previous convictions, if they have 4 previous shoplifting convictions, that could be something that was included in this. So I want to discuss a little bit some of the testimony that we heard in committee. We heard from some of the chambers who deal with commerce in our states at a state level, at a national level, big box retailers, and in our specific committee, 2 of my favorite local retailers from my community came and spoke. And what they discussed was the devastating effect that retail theft has on their businesses. And specifically, I think people were really interested to hear that there's a large increase in organized retail theft. We certainly see it at home. They're seeing it significantly in the big box retailers where, well, and I'll go back to one of my local grocery store owners. She talked about, they see it later on camera, of course, but they come in with a list. They've got, I mean, they have a whole plan of things that they're going to take, and then they go and resell them. We've seen it in my town for a long time. We dubbed it the ribeye ring because one of the things that's big to steal and then resell in my community is actually meat. And it's usually, obviously, good cuts of, a lot of times, very good cuts of meat. It's expensive. But so this isn't just somebody sticking something in their pocket because they want a sucker or something. You know, it's a very real effect financially. It's stress on the business owners. I can't tell you how frustrated I hear they are when they're talking to us about this. It takes a lot of time for them to review tapes. And then some of the testimony from the, again, from the bigger ones that have really seen this increase. Two examples from some of the big ones. One of our big ones that you all are aware of said that with across the board, they believe it's ballooning to a $100 billion problem nationwide. And they're starting to say they're looking at closing stores, which is a big concern for like my community, because my community is hit hard by this. So we could be looking at losing something that really provides a good service for our community. So it really is a big issue, and we need something when we're seeing this over and over and over again. We need something to be able to put some teeth into it for the appropriate people. And I would suggest to you that, you know, 5 or more is when we're looking at our right people, and often we're at double-digit convictions. And all we can do is put them in and out of the county jail. So we just kind of need the help, and I think your communities do as well. So with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Question being called. Discussion? Question being called. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I am a co-sponsor of this bill, but I do want to flesh this out because I think you mentioned it slightly in your testimony, but the way, even though this bill is not intended to direct its authority towards the person sticking a sucker in their pocket, the way the bill is drafted, I want to suppose this example. My 14-year-old puts a candy bar in her pocket and she gets caught, and she does that 5 times, she's now a felon. Now, I think your answer to that is going to be your safeguard is in prosecutorial discretion to prosecute my 14-year-old with the candy bar, the serial candy bar thief. But my question is, is the bill, you mentioned that the sucker is kind of the exception, or will we use a candy bar in this case? Is the bill drafted in a way to protect a thoughtless minor like that who's stealing candy bars, or is it just prosecutorial discretion, or what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not 100% sure about your question, because obviously if they just did it once, that wouldn't be, are you saying 5 suckers? Okay, so we talked about this, and I could bring an amendment. In fact, I will. It's because we see it in the law often. We discussed it in committee. But where it says separately brought and tried, which is generally what's done, but I'm perfectly fine putting that language in there. So because you're talking about 5 different convictions, not something that was done in a day, not 5 items. So I will bring that as a second reading amendment, because it should be that way, and I think it's understood to be that way, but we can flesh it out that it's separately brought and tried. So this is their, year after year after year, and on number 5 or past, we can do that, but not one incident, not 5 items.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And some of these questions I asked during committee, so the good bringer might see them coming, but in the language on page 2, it reads to me, so we're looking at line 6, we start with, under a municipal ordinance or any theft offense pursuant to a substantially similar law of another jurisdiction shall be guilty of. To me, that reads, if it shall be guilty, then the municipality can't bring the ordinance because it would then fall under felony punishable by imprisonment, which means that the district court would take it. So how, if a municipality has, say, a fifth offense, can they bring it, or does the district court have to bring that charge so that it's a felony offense? And then is there any agency for the municipality to say, you know what, we don't necessarily want to make this a felony. Maybe it's been 10 years since the last offense. Is that a consideration? So do we need to put a time cap on this in terms of, maybe it's been 10 years or whatever, and you've fallen on hard times, you made a mistake. And then is there a bottom amount on the items stolen? So I know we're talking about lollipops and candy bars, and we'd all love to have one right now, or I would. But knowing that prosecutorial discretion is probably not gonna use that, but what about $100? Another issue that came up in committee was that in cases where someone's a repeat offender, they oftentimes will get a no trespass on them, so they can't enter a building where they have stolen from before. And then if they go in again and they steal something, they've prosecuted folks under burglary, which is a much more serious offense because they trespassed and they stole. So I know the good bringer of the bill will discuss kind of that creative solution that they have used, but there's still just kind of those questions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washat's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report to do so with the recommendation that bill number 112, House Bill number 112 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 112 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill number 25. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 25, sponsored by School Facilities, School Capital Construction, Transfers and Distributions, an act relating to public funds. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations to whom is referred House Bill 25, School Capital Construction, Transfers and Distributions. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rise and report. It does so with the recommendation that House Bill 25 do pass, and I'll turn the explanation over to the good Chairman of Transportation.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bill that came out of the Select School Facilities Select Committee this past interim. And really what it is a cleanup bill on a couple of things that we had noticed in statute that were a little vague. And to help you guys kind of understand exactly what we're talking about, I'm going to ask everybody to open up their data book if you're so inclined to understand exactly what we're talking about. And if you turn to page 26, this is the flow chart on how information is, how we have money that flows into a couple of different accounts. And really what we're doing here is we are setting up and fixing a couple pieces of statute that were vague at best, and certainly try to help us fix that vagueness, but also make a clarifying issue with what we believe to be an issue with a pit stop of money. And so really what this does is it moves money from the major maintenance sub-account within the SIPA, and it puts it into the school CapCon account. Well, really all that is that's just fixing one of the stops that this money ultimately does. It just stops the appropriations team from having to appropriate it out of there every single time we go to do this. So it's never not been done. It's always just been a process that when this money comes into this account, it just automatically gets appropriated into the school CapCon bill, and then it just automatically flows. So this was just a cleanup to remove this. So that's what the first portion of this bill does. And then the second portion of this bill, if you look at the page 26 on the bottom right-hand corner, you see that there's 45% to school major maintenance sub-account. The school major maintenance sub-account is also being cleaned up, and everything's going to go into the school CapCon account, which just makes it a lot easier and a lot more simple when we're actually appropriating this. But the one thing that we're doing here is clarifying that if you see number 2 underneath page 26 there, it says 10 million to penitentiary capital construction. Well, in state law right now, it's unclear which sub-account within the SIPA gets that money first. And so all we're saying with this bill is we're dedicating that 0.45 or that 45% to school major maintenance. We're dedicating that into the school funding, the CapCon funding, prior to it going to the $10 million penitentiary capital account. It's already been what's happening. It's just actually creating the law to show that what needs to be occurring. So pretty simple bill, not a lot of adversity with this. It's more of a cleanup than anything else. But if there's any questions, I'd love to answer any questions.
Is there any, nope, question being called? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple questions on this, just for clarification purposes. First of all, it does seem like this takes money out of school maintenance and puts it into school construction. I could be wrong about that, but I want some clarification on that because, we've spent $3+ billion in the last, not too distant past in order to build schools. I want to make sure that we have the money to maintain those schools as we go along. That's the first question. The second question I have is that you're also moving schools or moving funds away from the state penitentiary as well. It seems like just a clarification on that, where there's a hierarchy of funds and seems like the state penitentiary, the capital construction at the state penitentiary gets bumped down a notch, and there may not be as much going into that fund as there has been in the past. Thank you.
Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, just does this bill have any impact on what the state treasurer does with these funds and his interaction with these funds? Does this have any impact there? Just curious if that was the case. Thank you.
Representative Brown, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and 3 really good questions. I want to make sure I get them all cleaned up, so I'm going to take the last one first. This has no effect on what the treasurer does, how they're invested, or anything like this. This is simply an appropriations bill. The select committee on school facilities basically is tasked with looking at all of our statutes on a regular basis to make sure that everything we're doing makes sense. And ultimately, the good group of people that staffs the attorneys and the people who work on this on a constant basis started noticing, wow, we're really just moving $1 bill from this account to this account, and then it's just automatically being appropriated over to this account anyways. Why don't we just make that transfer process pretty quick and easy? So this is strictly our body and what we do to appropriate. The next question was, we're moving money from the penitentiary, and no, we're not. We have certainly had that debate on this floor multiple times over the past couple of years, and we are not doing anything with that. That account was originally set up with $10 million in it. It has $10 million in it. We're not touching that $10 million. All we're doing right now is we have 2 sub-accounts within the SIPA. That state penitentiary account was set up 6-7 years ago, and when that was set up, it was in the thought process that we thought we were going to have to build a new state pen. Subsequent years have happened. We were able to repair what we have there. There's no need for us to go in and strip any of that money. We've had that debate. We're not going after that debate. But what we found in having that debate was how the transfer of money was occurring. And it was unclear in statute at the time whether money should be going into that account first or the 0.45 should be taken, and whether that 0.45 was taken afterwards, after the appropriation into that sub-account or not. So we're not touching that. We're not going anywhere near that. All we're doing is just justifying in statute what we've already been doing. And then the last question was about school major maintenance and whether we're taking money away from there. And the answer is no. Again, this is, we appropriate money for school major maintenance out of the school capital construction account anyways. It just goes from the major maintenance account to the capital construction account and then is appropriated for major maintenance. It literally is just a pit stop of where the money was going, so we had an idea of what it was. But ultimately, the select committee, both chambers agreed on this, that we really don't need to have a select finite amount of money set aside only for major maintenance. What we need is a pot of money to take care of our buildings and to build new buildings if needed. So that's ultimately what this bill is doing, is just clarifying the process of what's already out there.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I think, not to wake anybody up on this bill at all, because I do support it, but I think it's important to understand, so why are they talking about when it fills? So what you have to understand with our spending policy is 2.5% of the permanent mineral trust fund is 2.5% goes right into the general fund right off the bat. So this is the income. This is the income off our permanent mineral trust fund. So some years we do not have 5% or 8% or whatever. We might have 3%. So once you get the 2.5%, it goes into the general fund. Then the next 2.5% is split 1.25 and 1.25. And the first bucket that fills is SIPA. So that's where our SIPA comes from. So it's 1.25%. And then if you have enough money, then then the next 1.25 is filled and it goes back into the LISRA. And that's what we call the LISRA refuel. And so the question is, in this bill, or in what this bill is trying to clarify, is as we fill up that SIPA bucket, are we going to fill the SIPA first, or are we going to fill that 10% of the SIPA that went to the prison? So I just wanted everybody to kind of understand how that fills with the income. Thank you.
Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and opposed to the bill. I have some major concerns, two being, one, the investment powers that are being stripped from the state treasurer's office and that are being transferred to the state auditor. And second, the lack of guardrails that makes it easier to expand funds from the capital construction account. Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is not occurring in this bill at all. We're not restricting or taking away any treasurer obligations. What we do, if you look, what the question might be is on page 2 on line 16, it talks about starting July 1st that the state auditor has the authority to manage cash flow. Well, that's our state auditor's job. It's not our treasurer's job. Our treasurer's job is to invest the money. Our state auditor's job is to pay the bills and make sure that we have enough cash flow moving through accounts to make sure that that's occurring. We're not adjusting any duties or obligations of either of those two offices. All we're trying to do is make sure that if anything does occur that we don't have money in one account, the state auditor has the authority to transfer money into an account to pay the bill that's necessary. That's really what the biggest portion is there. And then secondly, the guardrails are what we're writing into law. We're actually putting those guardrails in here as what can be spent on this. There was no difference in histories preceding this bill. It was explained to us in committee that we're really not doing anything different than what this bill's already doing. We're taking the money from one account, saying that it can only be spent on this, but then we move it to this other account where it ends up getting conglomerated with all this other money. And then once it's conglomerated, it gets spent on pretty much whatever we want it to be spent on within capital construction. And so that means building new schools, that means major maintenance, all those things occur out of that same pot of money. So we're not changing what can be done or how it's done. It's just literally codifying what the practice has been and eliminating that one step of putting it from once it comes into our accounts and eliminating that step of going to this middle pot and saying that we have this arbitrary number of money available for us for major maintenance. That's not true. We actually have as much money as we have inside this major maintenance account now, and we can appropriate that as we see fit. So stand for any questions.
Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? Nope. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. What was wrong with the process before? I mean, I believe you tried to explain that, but it's unclear to me. Why was the old process a problem?
Representative Harshman.
Thank you,
Chairman
Mr.
Harshman.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer that, hopefully the good representative from Casper, this process started in about 2017 when we were in the crush on school finance, right? When our state was deeply in debt, not in debt, but in negative cash. And we don't have any debt. So we agreed to take 0.45% of the SIPA. But what we agreed to at that time, back in 2017, was to park it in an account. And that's called, we just named a new account called School Major Maintenance. It didn't exist before. And then and that's where the 0.45% SIPA. And then we created another account called the State Lands Royalty Account, where royalties from our state lands flow. And there was a $9 million cap from the 1980s. We removed that and we set up another little account, and both of these were holding accounts. And so the cash flow, the auditor transfers it there, and then it would be up to the appropriations committee then to go ahead and move that into these other accounts, the school capital construction account. School CapCon, school operations, and school major maintenance are all the same budget. And you're gonna see, they all come in the same pot, really, just segregated a little bit. So it's not like we have different budgets or different bills for all that. So why run this bill? Simply cleans it up. Instead of having these little stops and then another stop to put it in where it needs to go, it'll flow to where it needs to go. And then we appropriate out of that. The advantage of that is really on our profile. Because like all governments in the world, we work off profiles, and then how much cash do we have? Well, it's not really in the school CapCon account. It's in a state lands royalties account. So you don't really get a profile that like we should. It's cash we have, but we don't get a profile. So we got to look over and say, yeah, there's 40 million over here. So we really aren't running a deficit. And so it just makes the whole accounting piece easier, the budgeting piece easier, and more transparent, frankly, for all of us and the public. Has absolutely nothing to do with the state treasurer. And let me just say it again, absolutely nothing to do with the state treasurer and his operations or any of that. I just think it simplifies and makes it more transparent, easier for us to budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe carrying on just a little bit more on that conversation. Since I've been in the legislature and furthermore since being on the appropriations, one of the concerns that we've heard from this body and from our constituents is we can't track the money. If you look at the fiscal data book and you see all of the crazy lines that go from here and depending upon when this tip, and it's kind of like one of those things when you go to a hospital, you know, they've got that follow the marble and it kind of goes around and over and up, and it's amazing, but pretty soon your car's sick and you can't keep up with it. And so we've worked really hard to reduce the number of actions it takes to move money. We've tried to centrally locate it to pay the bills, and those various pots have evolved over the years and become more over the years. And I think in the last 6 years, 7 years, we've reduced those numbers and reduced that movement significantly so that we as a body, foremost, can follow the money, and so our constituents can try and follow how the money moves as well. And so this is an effort to continue that process, and would encourage you to, it is a cleanup, and would encourage you to support it.
there any other discussion? Question being called. All those, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thought
Body,
you-
really what I'm trying to do is save any of the incoming freshmen from what I had to go through my first year with the speaker that loved his flow charts and having to see, flow chart after flow chart. This is exactly what our good Vice Chairman of Appropriations was saying. This is what we heard from the very beginning when I entered this legislature, is show us where the money's at. Stop hiding it in sub-accounts in this account and that account. Let's just see where the money's out and where is it pay, what bills is it paying. So that's really what this bill is doing. There's nothing nefarious in this. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would call for a question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that bill number 25 do pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 25 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill, division being called. All those in favor stand. Please stay still. If you're standing, please stay still. Thank you. Those opposed, please rise. Thirty-five ayes, 22 noes. House Bill 25 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for consideration is House Bill number 34. Yes. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to do a little bit of a switch here a little bit. We're going to change a couple of bills around to give some people some more time. Next bill for your consideration will be House Bill 148. And then after that will be House Bill 34, and then we'll do 24 and then 70 as time allows.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Okay, next bill for our consideration is House Bill 148. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 148, sponsored by Representative Walters. Airport Liquor Licenses Amendment, an act relating to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 148, Airport Liquor Licenses Amendment, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Chairman, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rise and report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 148 do pass. I'll turn the explanation over the bill to the good representative from the center of the state.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you, members, House Bill 148 today, and this is really a further clarification of a bill from last year's session regarding airport liquor licenses. And so the meat of the bill is on page 2, lines 3 through 6, and what we do is further define the location in which this liquor license will apply. And so as we all know, our liquor licenses in the state of Wyoming are population-based, and most of our commercial airports, and remember this is only for commercial airports, so not every rancher in the state that has their own airstrip gets a free liquor license out of this. This is commercial airports only in the bill we passed last year, and this further defines that it's only in the terminal building where commercial traffic is boarding and getting on and off the airplane. And so like I said, it's just further clarification of this. And what it does is it makes sure those airports have a liquor license without taking a liquor license out of the pool of licenses available to a community, whether it be the municipality or this county. And that was the purpose of the bill last year. And then there was a little stretching of the language. And so this puts really good restrictions on it. And I would ask for your favorable consideration and answer any questions if there are any.
Is there any discussion on the bill? What's your pleasure? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 148 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 148 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill number 34. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 34, sponsored by Education, School Finance, Mental Health Services, and Act relating to school finance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 34, School Finance, Mental Health Services, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Berger, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermueller, Provenza. No. Representative Andrew. Representative Northrup, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 34, School Finance, Mental Health Services, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stiff, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Representative Northrup?
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 34 do pass, and here with the explanation is a good representative from House District 20.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So having served on the Education Committee in the interim, I thought I would take this bill off the chairman's hands and talk to you all about it. So one of the things we kept hearing over and over during the interim is about the mental health needs of students and the lack of services available to students for mental health issues. And then actually from my own community, I heard of programs that they had developed actually in a cooperative manner through the clergy. It was a program where they went through the clergy through a poker run to get some money. And then they also used some ARPA money to create a program to allow students to actually go out to book with a provider in another area. So it was telehealth, telemental health. And it was amazing the number of students that actually wanted and needed some help. And so this bill was put together. It's a $120,000. You could tier that if you want. I'll go through the guts of the bill, but the primary thing I want to get across is that there's a real need out there for mental health services for children, and we heard it over and over and over in testimony in front of the committee. And so this was an attempt to try to do that for a very short period of time, try to collect a little information, and then see what we can glean out of that information. So if you go into the guts of the bill, into section 1, it's for school year 2023-24, 24-25, and it is basically to augment current amounts, and it's for the mental health needs of K-12 student population. A school district may apply for a grant under this section. That's in subsection A, and subsection B, a grant awarded under this section shall not exceed $120,000 per year. And that's the reason it's not broken out by ADM, which it could be, but the discussion at the time was, and what I have heard, I guess, over the course of this discussion is a lot of your smaller districts have a lot harder time actually funding a counselor and having the ability to have a counselor around. And so my idea was maybe they need to be biased a little bit towards smaller districts, but I'm certainly willing to entertain if the bill goes forward, an amendment that would make it more by ADM. And then the grant at a minimum shall, this is still in subsection B, provide a proposal documenting the need for additional funds for mental health services, and then 2, the purpose plan, service, or programs to be offered, and then any other information requested by the Department of Education, who will administer the grant. And then subsection C, no later than August 15th, this is on page 3, the department shall notify applicant districts of its decision to award. Then subsection D, each district receiving a grant under this section shall report to the department on the expenditure of amounts awarded under this section, the number of students that received services as a result of the grant, and the impact of the services and programs offered. And then subsection E, the Department of Education shall promulgate rules as necessary. And then if you go into section 2, no later than August 1st, 2024, and again in 2025, the Department of Education shall provide a report to the Joint Education Interim Committee of findings and recommendations on the programs. And then finally, subsection 3 is the appropriation, which is $11,520,000, which would be the $120,000 a year for 48 districts. And so once again, the idea behind this is, one, we want to put some money out there. We want in a competitive grant program, we want to understand what the need is and get a better handle on what is needed out there for mental health services. And so the idea was to put out a small grant, even though it's a fairly large dollar, to basically just say, okay, what are your needs? We hear there's more needs than can be handled. And then what does that look like? And so that's the idea. I hope each district would have its own method of doing it. Some of them might do it through contracting services. Some would do it by straight up hiring more counselors. But the idea is just to provide more services. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question for the good speaker. The appropriation appears to be a one-time funding grant, and that's split across 2024 and 2025. What happens after 2025? It's not a reoccurring appropriation. Do we revisit it then? Is there a mandatory revision to go back, or are we gonna, what does that look like after the grant is spent?
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's better to hit me with one question at a time or I'll forget. So thank you. So no, it's a one-time shot of money for 2 years. And with the idea, it sunsets with the idea to just find out from districts, what is the need out there? Because even though we hear that there's a need, what is the need? What does the need look like? How do you best satisfy the need in bigger districts, smaller districts? And so, no, it's sunset.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not opposed to the idea where there is a need, but I guess the fiscal note suggests that there will be grants for all 48 school districts. And I'm just wondering, was there any testimony that some districts were already better positioned in terms of mental health capabilities than other districts? And if so, why are we anticipating equal allocations or allocations to all 48 districts, or was that just an estimate to figure out how much money to put in the pot? And secondly, I seem to remember that last year we passed a bill to allow districts to put additional money into reserve. And if districts have additional monies in reserve, is it necessary to fund additional new money to deal with this mental health issue?
All right, because we're going one question at a time, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so it is one pot of money. It is equal among districts. Like I said, that can be changed. And I think it varies. I think if you're a larger district, you have more of these challenges. But you also have the ability to probably fund more counselors than a small district. And so it's push-pull. You have more students needing services, but you probably have a little bigger pool of counselors to work with. And so I think the committee in the interim didn't really decide to break it down by ADM, but I think there's some proposals to do that, to look at both large districts and small districts. But the idea really is to get a little money out there in the form of grant to really understand what the need is, what the need looks like, how would be best to serve that need. So with that, I'll take other questions.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm respectfully against this bill. You know, schools already have in-house social workers, counselors, and other mental health team members. And really, that's not the role of school. School's there to educate. We should be focused on science, math, reading, writing, arithmetic. It's not the role of schools. And we already have resources dedicated to this. Thank you.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I could have more of a couple technical questions. For the districts that already are employing mental health professionals for their students, if they accept this money, would that prohibit them or inhibit them from spending that money that they've already allocated to those mental health counselors in the event that they apply and accept this money? And two, I guess my other question is with regards to some of the demand here. I mean, clearly there is a demand, but is there an alignment between the amount that's being authorized here and the grants that are being authorized and the actual demand? And will that supply meet that demand? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So to answer that question, no, it's just another pot of money. It doesn't mean that they can't use what they already have. And with the idea of just to have a competitive grant in order to provide some additional mental health services. If we were able to take care of all the mental health services out there, that we wouldn't have heard about the need. And frankly, it was not only one of the needs we heard in committee, but it was also one of the needs we heard that came out of that committee that worked for the good chief executive. And as it relates to whether mental health services are something that should be provided in the K-12 setting, oftentimes it's the only place any mental health services are provided. And you get into smaller districts, and so a counselor has multiple roles. A counselor is supposed to counsel career opportunities for children as well as be a mental health service counselor. And kind of what I heard locally in my smaller districts is they're spending all their time frankly, on mental health services, and they can't even get to their other role, which is counseling students for career paths. So I think there is a real need out there. I think we'll learn a lot more about it if we do this. So with that, I'll answer more questions.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all realize there's a real problem with mental health in our society. We talked a little bit about this during our suicide hotline, and I testified that I don't think a hotline is the only avenue of tackling this problem. We need some more assistance from other resources, and maybe this is one. I'm interested in furthering this discussion because it may be an avenue to help our youth with some of the depression and some of the issues they're trying to overcome right now that may lead to crisis situations. But one of the questions I have for the speaker, the good bringer of this bill, are there any requirements for a reporting structure? Once these grants are given to the individual school districts, there seems to be quite a broad avenue where they can spend the money.
And we may find that one school district hires a counselor and another school district may do something totally different that may be very successful. And we would like to, I think we would like to have that feedback. Maybe renting bouncy houses will actually help. I don't know. It just opens up the conversation if we have feedback, reporting structure, where the money's actually spent and how much success they're having, so that we can, after 2 or 4 years, decide what the best avenue is going forward to tackle this problem. Because I do believe it's something that we need to address here in this body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I'm missing the boat here, but it seems like we're aiming at a nail with a hammer. What is the source? When I was a young man back in school, this didn't seem to be evident, and now we're throwing money at something that we don't even realize what the source is. Are we missing, maybe our money would be better spent investigating what the source of these mental issues are with our children, instead of throwing money at the issue.
Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Teachers in schools are not mental health counselors. The question I have for the bringer is, why wasn't the community mental health centers brought into this to provide the services? They're the experts, not teachers, not school social workers, the mental health professionals.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So great question by the last speaker. What about community health centers? So in our area, we found out that their waiting list was so long they couldn't even get to these kids. And so that was, and I totally agree, I think the better quality of professional, the better help they will be for the children. And so that's one reason this grant says you don't have to hire somebody, you can also hire those services. So you could go out and hire private professional services. You could go out to the community health service center and probably put some money into that to provide it. But no, community health centers have a role in this. Our problem is, at least in my area, and I don't know about everybody's got a different area. The waiting list on my community mental health centers is pretty long. And so as things change since I was in school, and those of us that have gray hairs in school, absolutely, they've changed. I don't understand why all of it is, but it's a fact. Our suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. Children are struggling with mental health issues, and this is just an attempt to try to make a little inroad on that. And as far as reports, absolutely, subsection D, it's all about reports and finding out what we get out of our money. So each district receiving a grant under this section shall report to the department on the expenditure of amounts awarded under this section, the number of students that received services as a result of the grant, and the impact of the services or program offered. And it goes on and asks for other reports as well to the education committee. So, thank you.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to also give a little bit more into that. When kids go to school because they like to go to school. They want to go see their friends. They want to be with their teacher. They want to be in that group. 90% of them are excited to go to school. And the teacher gets to know those students when they get to class. And when she sees somebody that's off, and see that student that's off, what's bugging you, Jimmy? Why are you down? What's up? And that's where we need to start looking. Maybe that kid's grandfather died. Well, is it her job at that time to say, this part of the class, you guys go over here and you do something else while I work with Jimmy? Or should she say, come walk with me and let's go talk to somebody who can help you so that I can go back to doing what I should be doing, which is teaching. So healthy students learn better. The other part of it is that it is the safest environment for some of these kids. I mean, our kids, it's not true. But when you talk about those kids, maybe the safest place they have is school. And we'd like to keep it safe, and we'd like for it to be a warm and inviting environment so that they don't have that sense of hopelessness. When you speak about hopelessness, 40% increase by the kids. They just, they came off COVID, they're just, I don't know if what should be going to school or what's up. And so now we see 1 in 6 are looking at, they're confessing. We'd like to look at suicide. We've talked to people about suicide. So schools right now are like we were when we started in here, a little mixed up because everybody came back off the COVID thing and things are working, and they're starting to see the teachers now a year later saying, hey, we need some help. And so this just a little incentive to get some help out there, some good sideboards on it. Sideboards that were all listed on page 2, small room Romanettes 1, 2, and 3. And therefore, there's also a plan. It's going to be a good thing for districts. Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that schools are more and more becoming the center of life. And I'm not real fond of that idea. Originally tasked with educating our children, the next thing you know, they were tasked with feeding our children. And then they became a source of entertainment for keeping the kids busy for a while until we got home. Now we're asking them to counsel our children. All the while we have this ever-expanding role of schools, and we throw more and more money at it for diminishing results. I have no problem with the fact that we need some counseling, but in my humble yet always correct opinion, most good counseling is faith-based. If you choose not to send your child to a faith-based counselor, so be it. But I'm against this simply because I do not want to see the schools becoming the be-all and the end-all of a child's life and the overwhelming influence upon it. And I would rather move that influence back into the families, back into the churches, and back into the real society rather than this concocted society that we've developed. Thank you for your attention.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes the conversation just gets to the point, I think we have to smile a little bit, and because it's, folks, this mental health issue is real, and for me to try to explain it, I can't, other than when I visit with educators, when I visit with parents. We seem to focus on suicide a lot, but the depression, the anxiety, the other mental health issues that are really challenging our young people today, where does it exhibit itself, or where do we find out about it the most? It's generally where kids are collaborative and where they're together, and that's in school. And so you're a teacher sitting there, and even for those of us that wrote with Cole on rocks when they were in school, teachers even then would reach out because they could identify when you had a bad day. They put their arm around you and they said, what's going on? Why are you doing this? We live in a time that has gone way past that. And I think what the good bringer of this bill and the education committee that's dealing with that is, I think that the schools are out ahead of us. They're about 3 steps ahead of the legislature, maybe 3 blocks ahead of the legislature, because they've been dealing with this on a regular basis for a number of years. They've seen the acceleration, they've seen the climb. The point about should it be handled in the schools or in the community mental health centers, both. That's why when we changed the behavioral health redesign, we put a provision in there that allows, that says as a priority population, it's a child, a student that can be referred by the school or school district to receive services at a community mental health center. I think we would all agree that not every school district has the level of counseling it needs to assess, evaluate, or even participate in some of the levels of mental health challenges that some of these students bring forth. So if they had resources that they could then refer out within the community to get those types of resources and to get that type of counseling, I'm not sure that I understand why that would be a bad deal. And so we're trying to say in this bill that we'll provide funding to share ideas. I think the point was brought up, can we get some reporting back on how this all works? I think we see some of that available and the schools do want to share. As I met with the good superintendent from Fremont 25 and the good director from the department that takes care of services for families, their whole goal is not to be reactive. How do we get out ahead of it and prevent some of these things from happening ahead of time? But right now we're playing catch up and trying to do this because in Wyoming, we really do not have professional mental health services in the volume and the capacity that we need them. We can't get the evaluations for the state hospital. We have a contract with Seattle from a children's hospital in the state next to do evaluations for telehealth because we don't have those resources here. We're going to have to, I think this effort to provide these services helps us really address mental health. And I would again just share, or it's my opinion that this again is just one part of this whole mental health discussion that we should be having. And our job in this body is to help develop the policies and understand this so that we make sure that we're doing the state's role, because we haven't defined that completely yet. What's the state's role for providing mental health services to adolescents? We don't have that. And so we've got a job ahead of us. And so I'd encourage you to support the bill. I don't have all the answers, but I think that this is a good approach to try and at least mitigate or address some of these issues.
Representative Trujillo.
So we want to put a lot of money into taking care of.
Speak through the chair.
Oh, through you, Speaker Chair.
Representative Trujillo.
So we want to put a lot of money into mental health and have the school evaluate our children when they don't have a degree to evaluate. What they can do, from the representative that stood here right before me, is delegate. So if a teacher sees a student that has an issue, then that teacher takes the kid to the counselor. Our number one problem in this world and society is single parent homes. So if we want to nip mental illness, then we need to take it to Department of Family Services, because it's the family that is going to put this mental issue to rest. And through that, there's nonprofits and churches. It's a no vote, guys. It's not our school's responsibility to evaluate our kids. Redirect them to professionals, and let's look at Department of Family Services. It's a family issue, not a school issue. Thank you.
Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a couple of questions for the good speaker. I noticed on page 2, at the very bottom, and I actually have several if you want me to just do them one at a time, Mr. Speaker. Line 22 says other necessary information. It seems to me like, we'd like to know what that other information is that we're going to gather. So if you could elucidate that a little bit. Same thing on page 3, that each applicant shall provide other information. That gives me a little bit of pause for concern as to, it just kind of leaves it very open-ended. And then I have, borrow my pencil, write these down instead of one. I'm curious how we can provide staff for this. When in our state, we're currently having real problems finding mental health staff, period. I mean, in the city that I come from, they're putting millions of dollars into a mental health ward. And when I asked the question of where are we going to find the staff for this? Because the state, actually in that particular meeting, the response was that they were about between 2 entities, between the state and that agency that takes care of our veterans. They were, just in those 2, we were 400 mental health providers down. So I'm curious of how we're going to find the staff for this. And then there's one last one, Mr. Speaker, that I'd really like to know. In reading this bill, there seems to be one thing that's completely missing in this. Where are the parents in this bill? Are they reported to? Or are they consulted with about things of that nature with our about their children? I'm just a little curious about that. It doesn't seem to be in this bill at all. So if you could answer those things.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So as it relates to the shortage of mental health staff, absolutely there's a shortage. And I think that's part of what this bill helps, is because, and there was also the discussion of bringing in faith-based. So in my community, it's a combination of all of the above that does this. There's a suicide prevention group, and it includes faith-based, it includes schools, it includes law enforcement, it includes a number of things. And the idea behind the program that they've tried to put together, funded by, frankly, by faith-based organizations and others, was to simply be able to hire some of these services. And the reason is from what I heard from basically from counselors, is there's kids in crisis. They have to deal with them. They have to deal with them in school at that moment. And as it relates to parents, mental health services have been provided for quite a while in schools. I'm sure that each board has their protocols for how they involve students. This would fall into those, whatever protocols they have now. And then as far as what other information, we left it to the Department of Education to promulgate rules. Rules are a public process, and if they feel like there's some other information that is requested, it'll be a public process to determine what that information is, basically to be able to administer this program. So those are my answers.
Representative Chestik, or Clouston, pardon me. Forgive me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I previously served on a state board that oversaw education, we would get things like this, a 2-year grant. The good news about that is it's competitive. They would apply. If our education department didn't see worthwhile, it didn't get approved. Now, not every school district's going to apply for this. The price tag you see on this is the max. I can guarantee you for a 2-year program, a lot of our districts aren't going to take the time to apply for this. But what we did see on that board that I was on, when something worked well, they would bring it to us at the board, and we could distribute that information and those programs throughout the state. And those programs like this came from local ideas and the local boards, and that's really where some of our best ideas came from. It wasn't the legislator telling these school districts, here's your programs. It was be creative and let us know what works in your little district or in your big district. So that's what I like about this program. My first thought is we're throwing a cup of water on a house fire, and I'm not sure that this amount of money takes care of it. But visiting with people, they just said this is another tool in our toolbox that we need to look at. My other question is, and I wasn't here, but I felt like when the consultants were here and then we were doing recalibration, this is an area that the consultant said Wyoming has a large need in. And through the last recalibration process, we did not fund this part. So I think this is a way of maybe looking back and trying to fix something that maybe we could have addressed a few years ago. Thank you.
Representative Brown, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I doubt what I have to say is going to change anybody's mind. But this was kind of a poignant situation and a poignant discussion that was brought to me by a constituent as we're sitting here debating this. And it kind of hit me a little bit that we're streaming live. People are watching this. People are listening to everything we have to say. And one of my constituents just sent me this and says it's awfully hard to make headway on the 3 R's if the students are more concerned about committing suicide or talking about recently dead classmates than they are about taking algebra tests or poetry. That hit me. I honestly couldn't have said anything more poignant than that, to be honest with you. Is this the role of government? Man, I think our Constitution says we're supposed to help out with the general welfare, right? And I think our kids are most certainly our general welfare. This is not an exorbitant amount of money. We're not throwing billions of dollars at this. We're throwing out some opportunities here for some local school districts to try to find some sources for funding, to talk with their community resource center, to try to maybe get some telehealth into their areas that they can't afford right now. I heard the discussion about reserves. I'm actually not opposed to that. Maybe make them use some reserves, but I'll be honest with you, as the last speaker just said, this is a competitive grant process. This isn't just you apply for it and you get it. These actually have to have some rigor behind them. So we're trying to take care of them. I understand that there's a lot of pushback on this and that this is not the place for this. I would argue that our children spend more time in school than they do at home where they're awake. And I heard the comment about parents. Where are the parents at in this? Well, maybe those parents are working 3 jobs. Maybe they're living with grandma and grandpa have not been in school and don't know what the pressures of school are like, and they haven't been for the past 30, 40, 50 years. It's pretty easy for us to sit up here and pontificate and say, we know what it's like and where the things have happened and how schools are happening right now. But I'll be honest with you. Go spend 8 hours in a school right now. Watch the bullying. No amount of money can stop bullying. Watch the kids that run away from school buses because other kids are throwing things at them. That's what we're talking about here. These kids need mental help. And we're trying to provide them just a slight hand up. We're talking $50,000 grants, guys. You can't even hire a full-time counselor for this. This is just a little push behind to try to help out. If you don't want to help out, that's fine. I get it. But I'll be honest with you. I think the people back in every single one of our districts, I think there's somebody in every single one of our districts that could benefit from this. And I personally, it's been long enough for me to not remember what school was like, but I remember thinking I could have probably used some mental health back in my school too. And maybe not every parent has the money in their own account to send their kids to a counselor to worry about this. Maybe not every kid wants to talk to their parents about suicide. Maybe they need somebody safe to go to at their school that they feel safe with. I don't know. I hope you give this due consideration. This is not just a simple, we can't fund it because it's money. This is our children's lives, and this is making sure our communities are healthy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brown. I would remind all the representatives that we would refrain from using letters from constituents, even if they are on our phones. So with that, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it short, but this bill, I'm sure, is done with very honorable intent. We have no doubt about that. We also know this is a real problem, but we also know that one of the big problems that we have in these schools, there is a lot of issues in the school. And when we start putting more money in the school, now we're starting to, may not sound perfect, but to some degree, the more of this more money we put in the school, the more we pull this problem into the school. And I think the issue is, I know a lot of folks saying, hey, a little bit of government money can go a long way to solve this problem, but I think there's a broad spectrum of folks that do not necessarily believe that. And I understand we all have different opinions there, but at the end of the day, pulling this into the school just pulls it farther from the family where the real solution has potential of working. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Locke. Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. My thoughts on this are kind of like a lamentation of days gone by. You know, I'm one of the older members here, and I remember growing up in Sheridan in the 1950s, and the moms were around the neighborhood. We had, I had a stay-at-home mom. The families were all taking care of these kind of problems. People went to church on Sunday. They did. I didn't know people that didn't go to church. We didn't necessarily go to the same one, but everybody was there. It was this. And so this lamentation that I hear on the floor, I agree with that. I think this is the purview of the church and the purview of the families. But how do you take it back to that point? It's not where we are as a society, and it's not realistic. I do not hear churches saying, send us your mentally ill children. I don't hear them saying that. And send them to us, but we don't want your money either, so we're just going to do this without money. Send your kids to our church with all their mental problems. We're going to walk them right out of this. I just don't hear that. I don't hear that message. In fact, they're not equipped to do that. Think about we have several denominations in the state, the big denominations, and there's roughly 20% of our population that even claim to even go to church on a regular basis, about 20%. And then if anybody is within a church environment, they're going to agree with this statement that within the church, there's the 80-20 rule. 20% of the members of the church pay for everything that's going on in the church. So you have 20% that claim a church home, 20% that take care of the church that they're in. You're asking 4% of our population to step up, request that you send all your problems from the school because the school, nope, that's not your purview. Just send them over to us. No funding required. We have all the expertise, all the knowledge of how to deal with this issue. Folks, it just isn't realistic. Even though my heart is with those who want that to be the solution, in our society it just can't be. But we can't say our hands are tied, no one should act. I just can't say that no one should act. So this bill is an effort in the society in which we live for people of concern, people of faith, people from all stripes, to say, here's a real problem. No one out here has argued that there's no problem. That was not part of this debate. No one has said that. So here is a small effort to step up and show a little concern, a little kindness on an issue that faces our state. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Obermuller. Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Very good debate on the floor. My question is going to take it a little turn. So, we fund a block grant to education. And there's been several attempts to put that block grant into silos. And we hear about basket of goods and the tools that we have and things like that. But I honestly believe the more that we pull out of that basket of goods and fund separately, whether it's busing, whether it's mental health services, I think it's important to keep that into the basket of goods for the local school districts to solve local problems. So my question is there a concern that as we do this, that even more funds will go out of that basket of goods? We won't get credit for it. We won't get credit for it. So I would like to see things continue in a block grant type of atmosphere for schools to help local districts make those local decisions. And I just wonder how the speaker felt about that.
Thank you, Representative Knapp. Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clear up something that's been said. That I want to make sure that you all know that as a teacher, we are trained in mental health issues, you know, from suicide training to all kinds of trainings. Come to the coaches clinic. 90% of the coaches clinic is about preparing your athletes mentally. You know, go to a teacher training, lots of it. 90% of those trainings in education, preparing these kids to face these mental challenges that we have. So we do face those. Okay, I know the good Representative Casper, I know that his team, I know he's really focused on the mental aspect of his kids when they come to practice. We want your very best at practice, not your very worst. And if you're bothered by something, we need to address that before we go to practice, because that's when you get hurt. It's the same thing in the classroom. As a science teacher, early in my career, giving credit, we were preparing kids for tests, to take really hard state assessments. Heck, even the ACT. And talking to these kids and preparing them and getting them mentally focused. We need help. Teachers need help. Educators need help. This is just a small piece to help and to see what's going on out there, okay, and take lots of notes and lots of data on this, that maybe we might find something else. We do need a little more help. Okay? And I encourage you to vote yes on this, and let's move it on. If we have it in a second reading or third, then we'll find some more amendments to it, whatever we need to do. But please don't say that we're not mental health trainer. You know, we really work on mental health. And you know what? I applaud all the people in our community, because to raise my children, and I'll speak as a personal parent, I couldn't do it by myself. I needed my spiritual leaders. I needed my community leaders. We needed a few cops, advice from lawyers to help raise my kids, my neighbors. It takes us all. And now I'm finding out we need help from our legislators too. We're all in it together. We're all in it together. And I guarantee these teachers and school people are really focused on turning these young people into proud men and women that'll make us proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Berger. Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My good friend, a few speakers back, said he hasn't heard of churches welcoming in our troubled and our mentally troubled kids, and I would disagree. I think they're very welcoming and very opening, and the doors are wide open. I know people in this body who run their own churches, who make it their life's goal to reach out to those who are mentally struggling and bring them in. And that does a lot more for somebody than a government program does. I think about back when I had a mental health crisis of my own. It wasn't and I got directed towards some things schools offer, and that didn't do any good. It was involvement, partly through church, that gave me an opportunity to get involved in service, and it was in the community that also reached out and gave me an opportunity for service. Now, we can put $11 million toward a program, and I don't believe it'll get to the root of the problem, because those services were offered to me were free. Involvement and belonging and purpose are something we can offer to people free. And if we do more to promote that in our families, in our schools. Say, get involved, join the football team, join the debate club. When you have belonging and you have purpose and you're busy and your mind is focused on the good things you're accomplishing in life, that goes a long way. And so I would be opposed to this bill and think that we have options that we can pursue that far can outweigh the things that this was intended to do. And I appreciate the intentions and the bringing of this bill. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a former school board member on the largest elected school board in another state, I have a fair amount of experience with education. We shouldn't be surprised that the mental health of our children suffers when we teach in school that we came from nothing and life has no purpose. And that is repeatedly taught in school. When we teach children that they can shake their fist in the face of God and change the sex as which they were born, we shouldn't be surprised that their mental health suffers. I don't see how giving more money to a system that does those things is going to help children. Thank you.
Representative Haroldson. Okay, question. Question being called.
Well,
Oops. Representative Heiner.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more question that I've been studying the ARPA funding and the ESSER Act, and in that funding, there was over $122 billion that were given to our school systems from the federal government. And one of the targets were to help mental health issues. So with all this tranches of money that came to our school systems, did any of our districts use that for mental health during the pandemic and immediately thereafter? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thanks for the great debate. To answer that last question, yes, the program that I talked about that was developed in my community that was both faith-based, community-based, a biker gang doing a poker run, they did use some ARPA money to fund that. And the problem is one, there was not enough, and two, it's short-lived. And this idea is just to see what's out there, what we could do to help these kids and help these districts deal with these children. I don't disagree that it's better left in the family or better left to the church if that's the case, but that's not the case with every child out there, and I wish it was. But I don't understand it, right? I don't totally understand why we're in this position we're in today. And it's not any one thing. You know, I had one member of the body held up their phone, right? I think the phone, the internet, the whole, all of that bullying that can go on social media, I think a lot of that has hurt and has not helped the mental health of children. Whatever the cause is, we still have to try to do our best, and this is just a small effort, so thank you. On in support of the bill.
We have more discussion. Representative Alleman.
Mr. Chairman, I want to vote right on this. I think you know my feelings on the other bill. I want to vote right on this. I just stepped out in the hall and called a teacher from the very same school that I went to for 12 years. I asked her idea of how we can help. We know we can't stop the problem, but I asked her, how do we help this problem? She told me, I don't know, Bill, I don't know. And I said, if we have $11,500,000 that we throw at this, is that how we're gonna help it? And she says, Bill, I don't think so because I don't think we have the people to hire. So I said, how do we stop it? And she said, it's a combination of things. It is counselors at school. Then it is parents who are not in denial that the problem exists in their children. And from there, I don't know how we stop it. Maybe what we do to help stop it is we take the pornographic books out of our libraries. Maybe we quit ever putting our kids back in masks and sending them to school with masks on. Maybe things like this is one way we can stop it more than the $11,500 can. Maybe we should stop the woke businesses that go on in our schools. Maybe we ought to try that. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Northrup's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 34 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The House Bill 34 has passed. The committee division has been called. All those in favor rise. All those opposed. $25.35, House Bill 3525. In favor, House Bill 34 is passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're ready. We can stay till 10 o'clock. Let's go. We're rolling. We're good. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, it's yours.
Next bill that's here for consideration will be House Bill 24.
Okay. The next bill for consideration is House Bill number 24. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 24 is sponsored by Capital Finance, State Investments, Compensation, and Relocation Amendments, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 24, State Investments, Compensation, and Relocation Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stiff, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move in the committee whole rise and report it does so with a recommendation that House Bill 24 do pass. And I will explain the bill and I will explain the amendment. So ladies and gentlemen, for you folks that are new, Back in 2019, we created an in-house investment team, both in the Wyoming Retirement Division or system and in our state treasurer's office, who combined, those two groups basically invest and control about $35 billion of state dollars. I mean, it's an amazing amount of money for what we're managing and what we are investing. And so so what we did back in 2019 was we created a statute which allowed both the retirement system and the state treasurer's office to have professionals, investment folks on their staff who would then help invest part of their respective funds. And through that process, it's really quite amazing. We have increased our overall returns since 2019 by over $500 million. And the reason that we've done that, we're able to do that, is because we have improved our overall investment strategies. Our in-house investment teams on both sides are now exceeding the benchmarks from their respective investment funds up to currently anywhere between 75 to 100% of those other benchmarks that we compare those to. So the benchmarks, if you don't know what that are, is that you take the type of investment that they do different types of investments, State Treasurer's Office and the retirement. Retirement is simply our retirement funds. The Treasurer's Office are our permanent funds, like the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and our school funds. We have increased those returns last year, for example. The State Treasurer's Office had an excess or alpha return of $166 million. $190 million excess returns in the retirement funds. All of that isn't due to a large part on how we are now investing our dollars. We're changing that system. And for those of you who have been here for the past 4 years, they have seen me up here working on and figuring out ways that we can increase our revenues on our investment dollars. So you've heard that currently 20 to 30% of our general fund dollars come from investment returns. And that, yes, it depends on the year, but the maximum has been 30%. We average between 20 and 30%, which is it's never happened before in our history. And that is because of the way that we are investing our dollars and improving that. So when we created these in-house investment teams, and currently there are 8 employees who work for the State Treasurer's Office, 7 that work for the retirement system. The way that these investment professionals get paid is from the returns on what they earn in excess of basically their benchmarks. In other words, this does not come out of taxes. It doesn't come out of anybody's pockets except the total return and the excess return that they make and the savings they make by having them based upon how much, the return on their specific performance. There's also a statutory provision that says no matter what, you can't make more than 2% of total returns out of the funds. And your return and these revenues that we're paying these individuals is predicated on the amount that they can only get paid from the savings that we make, particularly in the Treasurer's Office, the savings that we make on not hiring outside managers. And so last year we spent $118 million on outside managers in the state retirement, in the Treasurer's Office, and we spent about $1.2 million on these individuals. And but that 118 million would be around 150 million. And so what they are making, pound for pound, is simply remarkable. But we've got a problem. And the problem is, even though these individuals make a decent living compared to a state employee, they make anywhere between 1/3 to 1/2 of what they can make if they go across the street and work for a professional firm here in Cheyenne or in Denver. In fact, the senior analyst for the State Treasurer's Office left about 4 months ago. He left and got a 3-fold increase in his compensation wages just by moving to a different state. And so what this is we're bumping up roughly about 20% the base salaries for these individuals. And when you bump up the base salaries, that increases their performance compensation. So let me describe what performance compensation is. Performance compensation is income they make, additional salary, predicated on their returns, on that excess revenues that they make. It's paid out 25, they have to beat all their benchmarks, and then after that, it's based on a percentage of how much the benchmark they beat it by. And then it's also predicated on payout 25% one year, 25% the next year, and then 50% the following year. The reason we had this performance compensation payout over time is so we don't, number one, is to incentivize them to stay. Because if you leave, you don't collect that compounded increases over time. And so it stacks up. So you have your performance one year. If you exceed your benchmarks, you get 25% the next year, and then 50% the third year. If you beat the benchmarks the second year in a row, then you get that 25, 25, and then that exceeds out. So that's how we tier it to keep our employees. So your CapFin sat down, we went through the suggested amounts, and what you have in House Bill 24 is that increase of raising roughly 20% of the base amount for these individuals. And if you go to the fiscal footnote on the back of the bill, the amount for the State Treasurer's Office is $395,000 for these 9 or 8 employees over the course of the biennium, and then $284,000 for the state retirement side. So that's the increase in pay that we're doing in order to keep these professionals that we've been training since 2019 to stay and work here and work in Wyoming. It does one other thing, this bill. It creates, to bring new professionals here is almost harder than keeping the ones we have, just because there's such a market for these individuals. And so if there's a $10,000 allowance to bring folks here, if they move from another state, qualified for these particular jobs, they have to work here for a minimum of 2 years, otherwise they have to pay that money back. And so it's just another incentive that we're putting out there to keep these folks here and to keep working for Wyoming. $580 million, ladies and gentlemen, since 2019. It's really a remarkable success story, and I appreciate your eye on the vote and the amendment. Happy to answer any questions.
I need a motion on the, move the amendment.
Yeah, I move the amendment, and the amendment basically puts in the dollar amounts, because we didn't have the exact dollar amounts into the bill, and it adds the 2 years for paying moving expenses to Wyoming. So I would move that amendment.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Question having been called. All those in favor say aye. Aye. No? The Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Chairman, discussion, Chairman Washoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't disagree with what we just heard. You know, these investment people are responsible for a huge amount of money, and their success benefits the people of Wyoming in a great degree. I just want to encourage the body to remember these comments when we start talking about other public employees. Public employees, it's a lot harder to quantify their value, but are no less important, no less critical than investment people who make money for us that we can quantify. Keep that in mind.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned in the fiscal note, it says 10 in the treasurer's office and 7 in the Wyoming retirement system, but you only mentioned 15. Do we have funding for 17 people or just 15? Are we having more? Are you going to hire some more? Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Sure, happy to answer that. We added 2 positions, one over the 2 years ago to the state treasurer's office. The problem is the pay is not high enough, so they are having a very difficult time hiring to fill those two positions. So this helps address that problem as well. But the amount that is listed includes funding of 10 positions, assuming that they get filled.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I'm going to vote for this bill because they have definitely brought benefit to the state, increased performance of our funds, and they have a tremendous amount of responsibility. But to the chairman, I need a little bit of clarification on the bonus. They get a bonus if they exceed benchmark, I believe you said. But this past year, most of the market decreased in value, and I believe our principal has decreased as well. So is that benchmark related to the market itself? As long as they're above that benchmark, they get the bonus? Or do we have to stay in the black to receive the bonus? Meaning, could it happen that we lose a few $1 billion in our principal and they still receive a bonus if they're better than most fund managers? Thank you.
Chairman Northrop, or Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The answer is it's based upon the benchmark. And so if we have, if the total value of the fund, say if the value of the Permanent Middle Trust Fund was 10 billion, and because the market declined, and now that the overall fund is worth 9.5 billion, you still have, number one, you still have income and you still have earned gains. You may have losses. So if the average loss on, let's say, just for example, that you use the S&P 500 as your benchmark. If you beat the S&P 500 because you only lost 5% over your market value versus 8%, you would still receive the bonus.
Representative Warnock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question on the bill is, I'd like some clarification, and maybe I'm not reading this right, but beginning July 1st and thereafter, the maximum annual salary to be paid is the following list. What sets these people's maximum salary now? And are we setting a cap for them? So the chief investment officer, you said this bumps them up essentially 20%. Does that mean right now they're going up to 300,000 a year, and they're currently at 240,000? So how is their current salary capped? Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer that question. So these individuals are unique in that we, meaning the legislature, sets their salary. We set their salary in 2019, and we set caps. So when you start out, for example, as an analyst, you don't go right to the cap. You have to work for 2 or 3 years in order to get that cap pay. Then if you move to a senior analyst, same thing. You don't start at the cap. You work your way up to the cap. About half of the senior analysts, my understanding, are currently at the cap, and some of them are not. So the answer is we set it, and we've set it by this body voting on that salary. And I've got a spreadsheet, and so I'll be happy to share it with you. That shows you what the caps are. But the caps is they can't go above that. And so those folks that are currently making the cap, for example, the CIO, the prior cap was $250,000. That now goes up to $300,000. Whether they get that or not, it will be up to the agency head to set what that salary is, but that's the cap on them. And the same for the priors. And the average increase is roughly about 20%, which if you take the increase for state employees from 2019 and including what is currently proposed in the budget and by the chief executive, is over 20%. So this increase over time is comparable, but not quite what state employees have over the same period of time.
Is there any? Okay, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that bill number 24 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 24 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for consideration is House Bill number 70. Oh.
We got her. House Bill 70 sounds like a great
Majority
idea. Go
floor.
ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, thank you. House Bill number 70, the reading clerk will read the bill. Oh,
House Bill 70,
Majority
sponsored by
floor.
Representative Nyman. Definition of home-based educational program, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4 Education, to whom is referred House Bill 70, definition of home-based educational program. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Houston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermueller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman.
Chairman Northrup. You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that House Bill 70 do pass. There are no amendments, and with the explanation of the bill is the good majority floor leader.
Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you, colleagues, House Bill number HB 70, definition of home-based educational programs. What this basically is, just in a nutshell, because we all like to go home here in about 15 minutes, is this is a repealer. If you turn in your bill to the back page, it's a very short bill, 2 pages, like a good representative from the center of the state. It's a good little bill. This is at the last page, it says, and we're going to strike, an instructional program provided to more than one family unit does not constitute a home-based educational program. So what the intent of this is, and this is the nexus, and this is what brought me to this point. I have a daughter that is currently homeschooling 2 of my grandchildren. She, according to state statute right now, can only educate her own family unit, just her 2 children. I have a daughter-in-law that lives less than a half a mile away with another grandchild, whom you got to see up here in the mezzanine the other day, and she would really like to be able to have Lucille be able to go up and join with her 2 cousins because Haley is doing such an exceptional, yeah, I can use names. Haley is using does an exceptional job. Not supposed to use names. My daughter is using an exceptional job. So when we started looking at this and started kind of looking into the statutes, that currently is not allowable under Wyoming state statute. So the reasoning behind this is the removal of this language will provide cooperative opportunity for parents and students which are currently not available under statute. It would provide for increased networking. By allowing this freedom will also serve to increase the quality of the learning opportunities for folks in the home-based education, is my opinion. Greater involvement and cooperation among parents, improved outcomes for our children, which is what we all are after. Better educated young people, more opportunity, more networking, it creates a better learning environment. That is it in a nutshell. And so I would be glad to stand for any questions that you might have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question being called. Representative Yen, or Minority.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my only question is, I think this is fine, couple families getting together, homeschool. My curiosity is how many families becomes a school? Like, at what point is it large enough to say that, and I don't know what the licensure around private schools or anything like that is, and maybe there isn't any. So I'm just curious on whether there is an unintended consequence if a lot of families and an entire community get together. At one point, is it so many students that it becomes a school?
Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Yen, that's a good question, and that question was also fielded in the committee meeting. We had some testimony in regards from superintendents, also the WDE also opined slightly on that. The most compelling testimony came from a superintendent that said this is currently going on in his district, and he said they're self-limiting. He said these don't get out of control. And also, you've got to remember, these are not for hire. These are opportunities for homeschoolers to be able to not for pay, because then you break over into your private school section. When you're actually creating a business model where you're generating revenue from it, where you are openly advertising for students, completely different ballgame. And you would have to go to section, let's see, it's 21.2.401A, I believe, that defines a private school in that manner versus in licensure versus just a home-based educational program. So yeah, they discussed that, but the testimony was such that it's self-limiting, really not a concern about expansion.
Representative Pendergraft. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to speak to that as well, and I think the best way to speak to that is to talk a little bit about what homeschooling is. We all think of school and we think of a teacher in a classroom, and that's the traditional idea, and we respond to that. And when we hear about this plan, we think, well, we're going to have some teacher that's going to go in there and just line herself up a whole bunch of students and basically start a private school. And that's not how homeschooling works. Homeschooling essentially is a way of life. And part of that way of life is close one-on-one instruction. We see an example of that up here in the balcony. These kids are being schooled. Every experience that they go through with their parents is a cultural enhancement, and it begins to cover all sorts of topics. If you get 25 kids in a room with one instructor, you destroy what homeschooling is all about. Additionally, a lot of the families that enjoy homeschooling are large families. We had one family that testified that had 11 kids. If you had a couple of families like that together, that's quite a limit. At the same time that family testified, there was another one there that had 9. So that is a factor in consideration, but I can't stress enough that homeschooling ceases to be what it is designed to be when you have a high ratio. While I'm here, rather than drag things out, I also want to address another question which comes up all the time, and that is, what about socialization? What about the socialization of these kids? Are these homeschool kids being isolated? I would contend that society is made up of people of all ages. Homeschool kids are generally exposed routinely and all day to people of all ages. Public school kids, on the other way, have a tendency to be shuffled off into a class where everybody that's around them is within a year or two of their age, and we call that socialization. I would invite others to testify about what we get in trouble for in public school, but I'll leave that to the discretion of the bringers of that. With that, I'll also stand for questions. Step down.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this bill, but I think networking and cooperation between the people of Wyoming is a well-practiced tradition, and we see it all the time. But I'm not sure if we realize it. Being from a small town, you see that in the ag practices, if I break down or something like that, my neighbor's got the tool that I need to fix, I go over there and network with him instead of buying my own, pick his brain, get his knowledge in order to fix my problem. The other thing is, when we're out there with our children at these brandings or dockings, whatever you want, with sheep and everything like that, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge being passed from the older generation to the younger generation on the vaccines, on the practices, things like that. So I think this networking or this sharing of knowledge exists throughout Wyoming. When our schools over there in our valley were locked down, they went to Zoom teaching. The students were struggling. There's no doubt about it, without a teacher in with them. My daughter excelled in math and science. And so she was able to help out my grandkids and during the COVID. And my grandkids talked to their friends, and their friends came over and sought out my daughter's help on some of these issues. So I think this is already occurring, and we just need to figure out how to allow it to go forth. Thank you.
Question B, Chairman Eklund. Sayem.
I hate to hold people, but so I'm a grandfather who has children that are homeschooled, grandchildren that are homeschooled, and children that are public schooled. And I've got a grandson in 7th grade who labeled a cell that had structures in it that weren't even identified when I took advanced developmental biology my senior year of college in 1974. So, and I couldn't have passed that test. So I would say the public education they're getting is as good as they want it to be. Parents that are involved with their kids in public school are homeschooling. In answer to how many students, at what point does it become a school, I would say that the bill answers it, it's one. And it becomes a school with one student in it. So I just am supportive of both. Not everybody can homeschool. Our economy and the way our culture is structured, you just, both parents might be working, they just do not have, and not everybody could afford a private education either. So we have both happening, and that's a reality of our society, and I defend both of them, and I think that both are doing as good a job as they can, and we need their support. They need our support.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a amendment being drafted at this time for this bill, so it hasn't hit the internet. I just checked, but there's one coming.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman. Wait
Chairman.
for the amendment. Stand at ease, wait for the amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
The majority floor leader.
You know, a bit of our discussion in the committee meeting was, and we hear this a lot, is it's kind of ironic, homeschoolers don't have enough socialization. But I would challenge all of you that have been through public school, what is one of the biggest things that you get in trouble for in public school? Socializing. So just keep that in mind while you're thinking about it.
The amendment got moved to the second reading. So we're back on the bill. Question being called, all those in favor Chairman Northrup's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 70 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 70 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 51 do pass. House Bill 81 do pass amended. House Bill 21 do pass. House Bill 76 do pass amended. House Bill 97 do pass amended. Beg leave to rise and sit again at 2 o'clock. Reconvening, House Bill 82 do pass. House Bill 90 do pass amended. House Bill 142 do pass amended. House Bill 134 do pass amended. House Bill 112 do pass. House Bill 25 do pass. House Bill 148 do pass. House Bill 34 do pass. House Bill 24 do pass amended. House Bill 70 do pass. Representative Berger, Chairman.
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Berger. Messages from the Senate.
Message 159. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 38, special license plates, organ donations. Ayes 20, noes 10, excused 1. Message 161. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 35, school crosswalks and pedestrian crossings, appropriation. Ayes 20, noes 10, excused 1. Message 163. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 67, multi-purpose vehicles, disabled license plates. Ayes 29, noes 1, excused 1. Message 164. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 68, prescriptive easements for water conveyances. Ayes 26, noes 4, excused 1. Message 165. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 86, voter identification, concealed carry permit. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 166. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 118, fund balance calculations, federal encumbrances included. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 167. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 122, non-resident workers, vehicle registration extension. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 169. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed The bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate Joint Resolution 6, political expenditures. Ayes 12, noes 18, excused 1. Message 170. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 13, bar and grill liquor license amendments. Ayes 20, noes 8. Conflict 3. Message 171. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 53, Wyoming National Guard medical insurance premiums. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 172. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 123, military dependents, school choice. Ayes 26, noes 4, excused 1. Message 174. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 40, Federal Political Action Committees, reports. Ayes 19, noes 12. Message 175. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 94, Federal Indian Child Welfare Act codification. Ayes 20, noes 11. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Reports from standing committees.
House Bill 20, sponsored by Agriculture. Land exchanges priority and act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 20, Land exchanges priority, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Crago, Davis, Slagle, Winter. Noes, Representatives Conrad and Eklund. Representative Eklund, Chairman. House Bill 22, sponsored by Agriculture. State land lease deficiencies, cure process, and act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agricultural, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 22, State land lease deficiencies, cure process, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. House Bill 56, sponsored by Representative Brown. Purple Star Schools, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. House Bill 57, sponsored by Representative Brown. Armed Forces Amendments, an act relating to Defense Forces and Affairs. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 57, Armed Forces Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. House Bill 64, sponsored by Capital Finance. Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account Obligations, an act relating to public funds. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 64, Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account Obligations, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Swanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 77, sponsored by Representative Harshman. School Finance, Average Daily Membership, an act relating to school finance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 77, School Finance Average Daily Memberships, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok. Noes, Representatives Bear, Locke, Swanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 79, sponsored by Representative Crago. Voter ID, concealed carry permit, an act relating to elections. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 79, voter ID, concealed carry permit. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. House Bill 83, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Tribal agreements to hunt and fish, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 83, tribal agreements to hunt and fish. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 104, sponsored by Representative Haroldson. Hunting of predatory animals, amendments, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 104, Hunting of predatory animals, amendments. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Byron, Larson, Singh, Western, Winter. Noes, Representatives Burkhart, Storer. Excuse, Representative Newsom. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. House Bill 106, sponsored by Representative Slagle. Eminent domain, wind energy collector systems, an act relating to eminent domain. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 106, eminent domain, wind energy collection systems. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Crago, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Noes, Representatives Conrad, Davis. Representative Eklund, Chairman. House Bill 111, sponsored by Representative Oakley. Endangered Children, Fentanyl, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 111, Endangered Children, Fentanyl. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Zwanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 136, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Capital Construction Amendments, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 136, Capital Construction Amendments. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman. House Bill 144, sponsored by Representative Strzok. Senior Citizen District Programs and Services, an act relating to senior citizen service districts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 144, Senior Citizen District Programs and Services. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Zwanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 169, sponsored by Representative Harshman. K-12 post-secondary education options, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 169, K-12 post-secondary education options. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Storer, Strzok, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representative Oakley. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 181, sponsored by Appropriations, Online Sports Wagering Amendments. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 181, Online Sports Wagering Amendments. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Chief, does that clear the deck? Does, all right. Just a couple of notes. In accordance with House Rule 4-5A, bill drafts that have been prepared by LSO, approved by the sponsor, and returned to LSO by noon on Thursday, January 26, will appear on the final list of bills provided for introduction. So you got basically till noon on Thursday to get all your bills that you want in ready to go. And then just the other reminder, and I think we did a pretty good job, but we got to be careful, is when we get in really tough debate late in the afternoon, we just kind of take a deep breath when you go to the mic. Take a deep breath. Think about what you're going to say. I'm not trying to stop what you say, but just think about what you're going to say. The later it gets in the afternoon, I can guarantee you the harder it is to push some of that down to say everything in the manner that we all want to have in respectful debate. So with that, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Speaker,
Please.
I move the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, January the 25th, 2023.
Committee announcements. There I might have one. Chairman Northrup, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4 will meet tomorrow, Wednesday at noon. We're going to do 2 bills. We have House Bill 35 and House Bill 176. Mr. Chairman, also, I sent around during this afternoon's discussion 3 cards for to Sandy Newsom Get Well cards. If you haven't seen them, if you haven't signed them, they're somewhere in here. I haven't seen them yet. Please sign them so I can get them back to her. And last but not least, actually it's second, I want to really thank Representative Berger for doing a great job. We got 15 bills out. That's a record for this body right now. Good job. But with our long debates that we have, there's a silent scream that's in the background all the time, and that's all those bills that you guys just put in. They're dying because we're talking them to death. Thank you.
Just a gentle reminder by the chairman, I guess that would classify as gentle, but we, as we all know, we're the House of Representatives, so we debate bills. And Chairman Zwanitzer.
Darn right. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. in House Room 3 to continue hearing House Bill 149, the protection of healthcare workers. We're going to try to get through House Bill 133, electrical installation by licensed electricians, and House Bill 37, telecommunicator cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And if we have time, which we won't, we'll get to 122, anesthesiologist assistant licensing.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, will meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning in Public Meeting Room 5 to consider House Bill 91, News Source Shield Law, House Bill 161, Loan Disclosures for Guarantors and Co-Signers, and House Bill 190, Wyoming Value Added Energy and Industrial Plan.
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 7, Corporations and Elections and Political Subdivisions, will meet tomorrow upon noon recess in room E005 to consider 4 bills: House Bill 85, For-Profit Public Benefit Corporations; House Bill 129, the Wyoming Private Employees Retirement Savings Plan; House Bill 164, Legal Notice Publications on Websites; and House Bill 173, Records Available to Post if time permitting.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment. We will continue our House Bill 027, 183, 184, and 185. We will also, there's a informal meeting with the Joint Appropriations at noon tomorrow. At 1 o'clock, we will hear House Bill 89 and 124. At noon, I announced that we would do the ARPA Bill 195 tomorrow, but we're going to hold off on the ARPA Bill in part because there may be several additional ARPA bills out there, and because there are limited ARPA dollars, we kind of bring that up at the rear to make sure that we don't over appropriate those ARPA dollars. So we will not be hearing the ARPA bill tomorrow.
Representative Obermueller, do you have a note?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, I failed to mention, I forgot, on re-referrals, we're going to do House Bill 38 and 59 immediately on adjournment as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Nicholas. Representative Obermueller?
Privilege.
Please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Tomorrow on adjournment, the House Republican Caucus will meet. It'll be for the election of the officers, and currently there is one person for each of those offices that has declared that they're going to run for those. So if you're interested in running, let me know that so that we can structure that correctly tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a committee of the whole list or anything that you want to announce, or? Okay, okay, perfect. You have heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, January 25th, 2023.